You begin with a quiet assumption. Words are tools of expression. You use them to name, to describe, to belong. Through words, you build meaning, and through meaning, you define yourself. Yet something remains unsatisfied. Every word you speak seems to move you outward, away from what feels essential. You speak of home but never arrive there. Ibn Arabi questioned this certainty. He asked whether the word that truly names reality is one you utter or one that speaks through you. If every being is part of a divine utterance, then what you call speech may already be happening without your command. He taught that the true word does not point to meaning. It is meaning returning to its source. So what does it mean to speak a word that leads you home? For Ibn Arabi, all of existence is the articulation of a single word, the unbroken command of being to itself. This word is not sound, sequence, or symbol. It is the act through which the real discloses its own reality. Everything that exists is a letter within that infinite statement. To forget this is to imagine that language belongs to you, that you are a separate speaker in a world of listeners. But for Ibn Arabi, speech and existence are one. The world does not merely speak of God. It is God's continuous self-expression. You have been taught that thought precedes speech, that you form ideas, then give them form through words. But when you observe closely, the process reverses. Words arrive before you prepare them. They shape what you thought you were about to say. Meaning emerges not as invention, but as revelation. This is what Ibn Arabi saw as the hidden sign of divine creativity within the human being. Language, he said, is not a human faculty. It is the echo of the divine command. When you speak with sincerity, you do not generate truth. You allow truth to speak through you. If the word arises on its own, then who truly speaks when you speak? According to Ibn Arabi, the command be, the kun of creation, is not an event in time. It is the timeless rhythm through which existence renews itself. Every moment, being declares be, and the universe answers by appearing. Each creature, every consciousness, is a form of that eternal utterance. To see the world correctly is to understand that everything participates in this ongoing speech. Reality is not something expressed by language. It is language, the speech of being to itself. To recognize this is to realize that your existence is not commentary on creation, but part of the very statement through which creation continues. You search for home as though it were a place, a belonging or a state you once had. You imagine return as movement, an effort toward what was left behind. But Ibn Arabi redefined home as recognition, not location. Home is not where you go. It is what you never cease to be. The sense of exile arises only when you identify as a separate self, detached from the word that sustains you. The moment awareness stops seeking its origin, it finds itself already there. You realize that what you call the journey is simply the mind's forgetting of what the soul always knew. Can one return to what was never left? Language divides what is whole. It separates speaker from listener, name from named. Each definition conceals what it cannot include. Ibn Arabi called this the necessary limitation of form, the cost of articulation. Every uttered word implies its silence. Every statement hides what it cannot express. Yet this very fragmentation carries a reminder. Every limit points to what exceeds it. When intellect exhausts its effort to define, it opens to understanding. Through the failure of words, the unspoken unity behind them begins to disclose itself. What if the purpose of speech is to lead you to the threshold of what cannot be said? Ibn Arabi taught that every genuine word seeks to return to its source. To speak truthfully is not to create meaning, but to allow meaning to complete its circle. In every sincere utterance, the word of being finds its way back to awareness. You begin to notice this movement in yourself. Whenever you speak from clarity, something settles rather than expands. The word ends not in argument, but in understanding. The act of saying becomes the act of returning, from multiplicity to unity, from expression to recognition. If all true speech returns home, then perhaps the real purpose of language is not communication, but completion. To speak is easy. To listen is rare. You realize that listening is not the act of hearing sound, but of allowing meaning to emerge without interference. Ibn Arabi said that the divine word is always heard by the inner listener, the awareness that remains still enough to receive. In this listening, thought softens and understanding becomes immediate. You do not interpret, you witness. The one who listens within and the one who speaks through you are not two. They are the same awareness perceiving itself through different movements of the same act. At this point, the distinction between human and divine begins to dissolve. Ibn Arabi explained that the human word and the divine word are not two different realities, but two faces of one disclosure. The difference is only in degree of awareness. When you say, I am, you echo the first declaration of being. Every act of knowing, every statement of truth repeats that eternal affirmation. What you thought was personal thought is the movement of the universal consciousness through form. You begin to see that there is no separate speaker, no separate listener, only the real, communicating with itself through the rhythm of awareness. The question that opened this reflection no longer requires an answer. You have traced the word back to its source and found no distance between the speaker and the spoken. Every thought, every silence, every act of understanding has been part of the same divine utterance. You see that the word does not lead you to home. It reveals that you have never departed. To speak truly is to rest in that recognition. The journey ends not in discovery, but in awareness. Not in speech, but in understanding that all speech belongs to the same unbroken act of being. Ibn Arabi's lost teaching was never hidden. It was only unheard. The word that returns you home was always speaking through you. This reflection begins with the illusion that words are human creations and that home lies elsewhere. Through Ibn Arabi's metaphysical insight, the seeker discovers that both word and home originate in the same reality. Speech, thought, and existence are one continuous act of divine expression. The intellect's effort to define gives way to awareness that receives. Listening replaces speaking, and what appeared as a search becomes a recognition. The narrative ends where it began, with the word, but now understood not as expression, sound, or concept, but as being's own declaration of itself. The word returns home not by movement, but by realization. And in that realization, you find